Okay, say what you want about the Disney Plus series. We all can admit, I believe, that they have given us an awesome look at a lot of really cool Stormtrooper variants and Imperial troops. And I gotta be honest with you, two of my recent favorites have come out of the Mandalorian series. And one of those is this ICAT driver, or Juggernaut driver, or Juggernaut Pilot, depending on how you want to call it, that showed up in the second season of The Mandalorian. That green deco, that cool top armor, and most of all, that really awesome looking helmet that's based off of the Turbotank Driver helmet is just pristine, and I loved it. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on one. Well, it finally happened. Let's get into this. All right, welcome to another episode of Paul's Collectibles. It's good to have you. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about the ICAT driver helmet, or the Juggernaut driver helmet, that I got from a side business, I guess is the best way to describe it. They're not a large company, but they do a pretty good, decent amount of business, called Imperial Surplus out of Southern California. Now, I was already headed to Los Angeles for some work there when I was contacted by my friend KC, who you've heard me talk a lot about on this channel, and he said he had a great opportunity for me to pick up an entire set of ICAT armor at a discount price because a gentleman who had bought it didn't want it anymore and didn't want to finish the build. So I took him up on that offer, and we spent 3 days straight through building it so I could drive it back here to Arizona. It started out in a bunch of different parts that needed to be cut and sanded and then painted and weathered, and then at the end of it I ended up with an entire suit. But we're going to be concentrating today on the helmet. Now, as I mentioned, this helmet comes from a company called Imperial Surplus. They've got a great website, and it's run by a gentleman by the name of Kevin Weir. As a matter of fact, while we were building the armor, Casey went back and forth with him to ask a couple of questions, and he was absolutely gracious in every aspect. On his website, he has a number of different kits. Now, nothing he sells comes pre-built. You have to buy the kit and then cut it down and sand it and paint it, just like we did with this helmet. And as you can see here, he also sells just the helmets. This ICAT helmet comes in a number of different pieces, but the good part is he offers plenty of resources and YouTube videos of very detailed step-by-step instructions on how to build the helmet. And even for someone like me who's not very artsy and doesn't have a lot of patience, and for whom this was basically my first build, I was even able to pull it off with a little bit of help from KC. And before we take a look at the helmet, one thing. I learned about an absolutely new, powerful glue called CL glue or CR glue. I can't remember anymore because I kept making fun of the name when I was with KC. But it's this stuff right here, and if you're going to do any building of armor or this helmet that you pick up from Imperial Surplus, or any other helmet from Imperial Surplus for that matter, I recommend getting that glue. It bonds in seconds and it's awesome. But with that, let's get this helmet in front of some lights, take a look at it, and I'll show you what I recently acquired from Imperial Surplus. Okay, let's talk about the first thing. Obviously, as I showed you in the picture, this comes in 3 pieces. When you get it, it comes in the whole helmet, and actually it's closer to 4 pieces. The visor comes in a piece you have to cut. Then this top blast shield comes apart from the interior blast shield, which you can see in there, and they all have to be glued together, and then the visor has to be cut down and installed in some fashion. The helmet itself is an incredibly sturdy, very heavy slush cast or rotocast. It feels like fiberglass. It might be some form of plastic, but whatever it is, it's incredibly robust, very thick, and as you can see, very good quality. And then, also, these 3 pieces under here, these little 3 black pieces, these also come 3D printed, and they have to be glued inside when you get it as well. Now, before you start judging the paint on this, I think it's the right color. Sometimes, depending on what kind of light I put it in, it looks like it might be too dark, and then I get it in good light and it looks just fine. But I painted it myself. Well, excuse me, the guy that I bought the kit from painted the original green on here. It's a sprayed on can, and I'm sure he sanded it down and everything, and then I did the weathering on it. Now, don't judge my weathering. I tried as best I could, and it was one of my first jobs, but I'm pretty happy with it. But as you can see, Imperial Surplus, I talked about the good quality service, great prices. I think this costs about $200 maybe. You'll have to look on the website for the kit, but wow, it's incredibly worth it. This is one of the sturdiest helmets I have, And as you come around, you can see it's got all the very specific, very well cut in details, all very nicely done. It's incredibly symmetrical. As we come around here, you can see there's the telltale telephone, as everyone likes to call it. And as you come around here, the visor is good and robust. It's good and thick. It looks proper on there. We can continue to come around and you see the lines and the notches in the back of the helmet all perfectly cut in. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this cast whatsoever. It looks beautiful. Now, I'm sure there's a distinct possibility that the gentleman from whom I bought this helmet may have cleaned up a little bit, but this is just indicative of an excellent amount of quality craftsmanship. Look, the grooves all the way on the top there come all the way around, and there's just absolutely nothing to complain about on the exterior of this helmet. Imperial Surplus did an excellent job. Now, as you can see, I've put some greenish, light greenish weathering and some drips and other thing into it to give it a little character, to give it a little bit more screen accuracy. They're not awesome. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I did the best I could. And then I learned a technique with a sponge where you put black on it. Let's take a look at the inside. Now, as is typical when you get these cast helmets like this, all of this padding that you see in here, this is all mine. These side pieces are Velcroed in, and this piece in the top here with the triangles is just loosely stuck in there. It actually stays really well. That way I can take it in and out if I want. And if you can see, the visor has been cut with a Dremel and installed. Now, the interesting thing about this helmet is because of that huge blast shield on the front, it wants to lean forward on you. Now, there will be a little bit of separation with the visor once you get it in. Mine's in with Velcro and it's jammed in there really good. But this part of the visor was resting on the bridge of my nose and it hurt. So we took a little bit of plastic molding and stuck it there so it could rest on the bridge of my nose, and it does just fine. But as you can see, no corners are cut here. There's details in the top, underneath, and over here underneath, like fake vents and buttons and things like that. The little notches. Overall, this is done very, very well. It's just absolutely amazing helmet. I just am just so excited to have it. And it was easy to put together as far as gluing and everything like that, especially with the instructions. And as you can see, and as I mentioned, this helmet is one of the few that is built absolutely perfectly as far as size is concerned, and it fits on my gargantua head. But there it is, just a quick look at the kit, which turns into a helmet from Imperial Surplus, which, as you might imagine, I can highly recommend, especially if you're looking for a project or something that's fairly simple to do to put together for a helmet. And with that, if you're not a subscriber, maybe consider doing that for me. It's a great way to support my efforts here at Paul's Collectibles, or if you're a longtime viewer or already a subscriber, you know I greatly appreciate you. But with that, I'll see you on the next video.